Welcome to Rooted, where we become more rooted in our faith and growing in community. I'm Sarah, and today I have two very familiar faces or guests. I'm trying to think of new things to introduce you guys with, but Pastor Mark is with me today.
Back
Welcome.
again.
And so is
As
Pastor.
usual.
As usual. And
Yep, the
Pastor
familiar
Jake
face.
is here as well. Welcome.
Come on now.
I'm glad to have y'all both
Yep.
today.
Good to have you here, Sarah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah, a familiar face
Oh, my
that leads us
goodness.
every week.
Oh,
This
my
is Sarah.
goodness.
Sarah,
Thank
we're glad to
thank
have
God for Sarah.
you.
Because
Sarah, we're so grateful to have you on the podcast today.
Oh,
we
thank
appreciate you.
yeah,
Thank you. You want to lead the conversation today?
I do not
Do you not?
want to lead the conversation.
that's why we need Sarah.
Sarah does a great job facilitating
Okay.
this discussion
She keeps us
today.
organized.
She,
Kind of.
Very
yeah,
much
it would
so.
be total randomness if Sarah was not here. So
Okay.
we appreciate her being on the
We
podcast
do.
Thank you. I
Very
appreciate
much.
that.
Yes.
All right. Well, week 4
Yes.
of Run. We're
almost
to
there.
the
We're almost to
end
the finish
of
line.
This, of the Vision
Yep.
month. And yeah, this was a great week, great Sunday. And yeah, it's all about legacy.
Yeah.
And you brought a baton.
Yeah, I brought up a ton.
You did.
Yep.
And talked about relays. I think relays are my favorite thing, one of my favorite things to watch
Really?
during the Olympics. Yeah.
Relay race.
Yes.
Really? Why?
Oh, now you're going to take over the conversation. Ask me why. No. I think there's so much that goes into the relay.
Yeah.
Like they're very intentional with who is running which
Yep.
leg of the
Strategic.
race.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then I mean, from my understanding, they spend a lot of time. And when I was young and was running relay races in school, like they spend so much time just practicing in the exchange zone,
Handoff, yeah.
practicing the handoff.
Yeah.
Because if you miss that handoff, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
you're disqualified.
I think it's
aren't
a
You
you?
have to have the
disqualification.
baton.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
And
I love relay race. It's not really like passing a baton, but I love watching during the Olympics, the swimming one where they all four swim.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
I love that too.
yeah,
I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Shout out the
I don't-
Olympics.
Yeah.
the Olympics.
I don't know why I brought that up. Anyway, back
Yeah.
to back
The
to
baton
legacies.
and
Yes.
relay race.
See why Sarah is here?
Yeah,
This is why
thank
Sarah's
goodness.
here.
Well, I'll just start here. I know we
Okay.
talked about your example of the baton and the exchange, and really signifying that there's someone that's going before us, and then we're then taking on the baton
Yeah.
and passing it on. There is the divine relay that's going on in our spiritual lives. But just to start, who is someone that you would say has been the example or has gone before you and has put or had a legacy that they have left to you, that you are, as that example?
Yeah. Yep.
You weren't prepared for this question.
PJ,
I'm
you go ahead
sorry.
and start.
Yeah. Well, you asked that question, and I had like different times in my life kind of come up, and I guess I'll just talk about church, and I think about all the people that have come before me as youth pastors and youth leaders, and I even I try to honor those people even when sharing with the students. I'm like, hey, things were never always just in the APC. Like Pastor Mark used to have hangouts in the parsonage. They called it the hangar, right?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh,
Wasn't that what it's
my
called?
goodness.
Pastor-
Shout out to Mark Schnell.
Yeah.
He was my youth pastor who had that idea. Back in the day, the parsonage was empty,
Yeah.
and he's like, man, we got to turn it into a youth center.
Yeah.
Called it the hangar.
Which is
Wow, you just brought back a memory I have not thought about. Shout out to Mark Schnell.
yeah.
Go. He was actually in the video. If you,
I did not know that.
He was
And
singing. He was
he
like
was-
singing as the one with a hand raised like this, and he was singing. Yep.
that's See, like that's just great.
Yeah.
And I
Wow.
I don't know this
Don't
guy,
know
right?
him.
But I know the stories like faithfulness, and like as Pastor Mark came through, as youth pastor, and Todd, and Pastor Jeremy, and Lauren, and Brian, and then myself. It's just like to honor those people, and like they also prayed for moments like this. They prayed for the seats to be filled. They prayed for us to run out of metal chairs, like which happens every Sunday now, and we're sitting in somebody else's sacrifice, whether that's through what they planned for, what they envisioned for this thing to look like. And then, obviously in life, there are people who have left legacies
Yeah.
for me. But I think about here at the church, like people who have dreamed of this,
Yeah.
of what this would look like for our youth ministry. But even just thinking back, and I'm sure Pastor Mark will share, just seeing that video yesterday was just crazy. And I had seen the video before, but then just to see for it to be lived out is just,
Yeah.
it's awesome. Like I'm in
Mhm.
awe of it, right?
Mhm.
And you don't sit in awe of something too often, but
Yeah.
see God's faithfulness in it is incredible.
Yeah. It's
I
good.
loved how the media team put the tag on the end
Yeah.
to show what it looks like. Shout out to the media team. I'm shouting out everybody today.
Everybody.
Also, if I'm shouting out, shout out to Tim, who works in our media department, who's behind the camera right now. Today is Tim's birthday.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Tim.
birthday, Tim. Anyway, okay. So I love how they put that at the end of the video. It just kind of is a full circle moment to see all of that. And it was just cool. A lot of flashbacks, a lot of memories for me just of my childhood, and then the last 24 years of ministry here at Emmanuel have seen so much and seen God's faithfulness through every stage.
Yeah.
And I was talking, I forgot who I was talking to. Maybe it was my dad or someone else. I can't remember. And they were telling me about, there was this woman named Sister Bergeron. Y'all don't know Sister Bergeron, but Sister Bergeron done pray for you. That's for sure. She was this old lady in the church, wore her hair in a bun and this long dress. Like every service, she was always in a long dress. And she would pray, and she even prayed, God, give us a road. That was well before beagling was even a thought. She would pray, God, give us a road so people can get here. This was even before we even talked about building the sanctuary we were in.
Yeah.
It's people like that lived a legacy of faith,
Yep.
that were praying. And we are seeing the results of the revival we are in. And sometimes we are always praying for a revival to happen, but we don't see the revival we are currently in. And what we are seeing is not normal inside of Emmanuel.
Nope.
The life change we're seeing, how people are being baptized as the confession of faith before people to say, God has done something inside of my heart. And then to hear the stories of how God has redeemed people, saved people, restored people, changed people. And then that influences the people they come in contact with. And it's just like a spider web that just goes and just reaches so many people. I mean, it's not normal. So we are, yes, we pray for revival, but we are currently inside of it. And I pray that God's people would see it for what it is. But it's people like Sister Bergeron who left that legacy as people like Ed Ratcliffe, that old guy in the video, you know what I mean?
Yep.
He taught me, he'd been here forever. And I just hear stories and to hear him pray. I remember even on Sunday evenings, the people would get together, pray before Sunday night service. And as a little kid, I would walk up the hallway towards the sanctuary, and they met in a little tiny Sunday school room off to the side. And sometimes the door would be cracked, and I could hear them praying in there. People like Ed Redcliffe and my dad, and people like Sister Bergeron and others who would meet in that room and just pray for revival and pray for their sons and their daughters and their family members in the community, and just to see the power of prayer that left a legacy on me. It's just a powerful, powerful thing.
Yeah. Which you have the unique privilege of.
Yep, I sure do. Of seeing it all, and it's incredible.
And being a part of it, which is extremely incredible. I would say for myself, the legacies that have been left before me. I know I've talked on the podcast before about my grandmother, and just the recently. I don't know if you were sitting on the podcast when I shared this, but we were given a memoir that she had written about her childhood and growing up, things I never knew about my grandmother. And just the life that she led, I didn't realize the amount of hardship she went through her life, but her faithfulness to the Lord, her faithfulness to the local body, even well into her 80s, she was still teaching Sunday school for the young people in her church. And so just the rich legacy through family that I have, that today it's impacted me, and obviously taking that baton and, running the race well in the days ahead, that's had a huge impact. I can think of, there was another man named Jerry. He I went to Salisbury Christian School, graduate. I'm an SCS JAG.
Go Jaguars.
And at the time, they didn't have their new school building. And so we didn't have a gymnasium. We actually met we had school in the bank building that's just right across the street from the church. And so we used Delmarva Evangelistics there, which I don't think now Salisbury Christian is also meeting out of there as well. But their gymnasium that they had, we would have play all of our athletics there, practices, games, everything. Well, there was a man named Jerry that did a lot of the janitorial work there at the church, and I would lead a Bible study or a devotional with the team before we would go participate in practice or whatever, and he would come and support. He'd come and sit with us and support the devotional that I'd give, and would exchange words of encouragement, like keep pursuing what God has placed inside of you. And just a man who had no relation to me in any way, but left a huge impact on my life just by seeing something in a young person and cultivating that and encouraging me in that, such cool things that God can do through people.
Absolutely.
And they don't even realize the impact that they have made on your life. But that's just another example
It's awesome.
of some of the people that have left an impact and a legacy that now encourages me to run my race. And, you took us back because Hebrews 12:1 says, therefore. And so we looked back at Hebrews 11, the heroes of the faith. And I'm so glad that we have Hebrews chapter 11. That we have the opportunity to see this cloud of witness that we bear witness to in our lives. And so I think that's what you were trying to encourage us to do.
Yes. If I had more time to talk, there are a lot of things I would have liked to share.
Okay.
One of which is we do a terrible job at looking back in today's current church. A lot of times in current Christianity, we're always focused on a different type of method to reach the next generation. As well, we should be. Because if we aren't changing our methods and culture continues to change, then we really miss the opportunity and a platform to engage a culture that needs to hear the gospel. But yet there is a trend inside our current Christianity, our current culture and church culture, that we get consumed with being cool. We get consumed with being relevant, that we don't take the time to go to the past and see the messages that have been left and how they propel us forward to the future. We should always be changing the method to reach culture, always. But the message never changes. The message stays the same. I'm preaching the same thing my father did 35 years ago, except I just ain't doing it in a suit. And it looks different. The music changes. The presentation changes. The methods change. But the message stays the same. And what the church needs to do is, yes, you want to always change your methods to reach culture. But the message should always be the same. And sometimes we got to go back to the past and get a glimpse that encourages our faith moving forward in the future. And so I think we do a relatively good job at that at this church of trying to be cutting edge, per se, in the way in which we do things to change the method to reach culture. But there is part of us that always recognizes the past. Staying true to the message of the gospel that is preached, looking back to the people that have gone on before us and seeing how they lived in faith. This is the greatest example to us of what we need moving forward, and also keeps our feet on the ground to the gospel. We're not going to shift away from it, and that's what's happening in the church today. We get so consumed with cool and reaching culture that we shift away from the gospel, and we go away in order to preach things that are not true to the word. And so what keeps us grounded is to go back to the past and see the roots of what we come from, the message of the gospel, that's rooted in this truth and carry that into the future to make sure we never get away from it. And so I think that's what Hebrews chapter 12 does for us. You know, whenever we go, I'm sorry, I'm talking so much in the podcast today, but
That's good.
one of the things that are so important for us is that when we get in the Word, it reveals so much to us in so many ways.
Yeah.
The Word, first of all, is convicting to us.
Yep.
When we get into Word and we approach the Word and we say, God, speak to us, what we're hoping for is that something would be pricked inside of our hearts that would convict us of something in our life, right?
Yeah.
The Word is also a sense of revealing or convincing also inside of us. So it's convicting. This is what I need to change. It's also convincing, where it's something that I need to learn. Oh, I never thought about it that way. This is my perspective. This is my approach that I need to take to the Word. But also the Word is a sense of encouragement that brings courage. And I think that that's what Hebrews chapter 12 really does for us.
Yeah.
Chapter 11.
Sorry, chapter 11 and chapter 12 really is it gives us a sense of courage. Now I'm able to look at it. And I see people from the past that give us a sense of a life lived by faith, trusting, fully relying on God, and Him showing up time and time again. Maybe not how they wanted it to be, but how God designated for it to be. And ultimately, I'd rather be in the center of God's will than any other place. And that gives us a sense of encouragement to have courage to face whatever we're going through. And I think that's what Hebrews chapter 12 does so appropriately for us is when we study, when we see in Scripture examples, it is the clue, it is the sign, it's the encouragement we need that gives us what we need to continue to pursue and keep going on. It's been passed down to us.
Yeah.
And that was the goal of what I was preaching on Sunday. You know, sorry, I just went on a rant there, but
No, it's good.
No, that's so good.
Yeah.
You have anything in addition to share?
No, I really like the ability to like look back. Like that's why, and I don't know what the actual probably original titles of it all were, but Old Testament, New Testament, right? Like New Testament is the new covenant with Jesus, but the Old Testament is showing you like who God was, is, and always will be. And like the Hall of Faith, right, which is Hebrews 11, that shows us who God was. And that if that's who God was, that's who He's going to continue to be.
Yeah.
So if God continued legacy or did great things for those people, we're not alone in the things that we experience. Nothing, the word says nothing is new under the sun, right? So when we go through our life, like, and we're like, man, this has only ever happened to me. Maybe like with technology and stuff like now, maybe that's a little bit more niche, right? But the reality of it is like there's still depression. There was depression back then. There's still addiction, like all those things, right? There's still death. There's still everything. But God still uses people who were broken at one time. And that's the legacy. Like no matter what you've done, what you've come from, what's happened to you, God still wants to like use you. So those people who have gone through it and have accomplished things through and with God, those are the people who are watching us. Those are the people who are cheering us on. That's what they pass down. Just because it happens doesn't mean it has to stop you.
Right.
Like keep going, keep going, keep going. So.
And I think that's the beauty too, is I know it says in Hebrews chapter 11 that many of them didn't even see the fulfillment of what God was doing. And that's not the exact words, but pretty much communicating that they didn't even get to see the fruits of their labor in full. And, you know, I think that's the case too when you talk about Lady Bergeron, Sister Bergeron. You know, I'm sure
I don't even know what her first name was. Maybe her first name was Bergeron. I don't know. I can't.
I don't know. Sister,
Anyway, sister,
lady.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, but she all of these things that she prayed, she didn't get to see the fullness, or like if they could see what God has done and the prayers that were answered that they prayed and the sacrifices that they made for what has happened here at Emmanuel Church.
It always lives past us.
Yeah.
It always lives past us.
But I think
know
that's
that
a
old
great
saying,
perspective
it's a
for
great
us
perspective.
that are running the race right now in the thick of it. Just to remember that this goes beyond the legacies that we live. It's going to go way beyond the life that we have lived.
And it should.
Yes.
It should. That's how God designed it.
Yep.
It wasn't designed to stop when Jesus was raised from death.
Right.
Like it's been the picture the whole time.
Yep.
And it always should be passed down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. So good. From generation to generation.
Yes.
Yeah. So you took us to I think we love looking at the great cloud of witnesses, but then he in Hebrews 12:1 part B says, "Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." And you went from talking about living it to leaving it, and talked about our 13-year-old who has picked up running, and if you were to give him weights and tell him to go run, then, he's not going to be able to effectively run. But that's how many of us live.
Yeah.
We are running these races by the restraints and things that we either have been passed down to us, or that we have put on ourselves based on our choices or life experiences, that hinder our ability to run. And you didn't really go into the sin. You really went into the things that hinder us.
Yeah.
And the things that hinder us are not always bad things.
Right.
But they become a restraint in our running. So I don't know if there's anything else. I don't have a specific question, but if there's anything that you would add in regards
Something
to...
I would add was and maybe this needs to be a series, but so many people struggle with strongholds. There are a lot of people who have not done the heavy lifting and the work to realize why they do what they do, why they respond.
Yeah.
I've pastoral counseling is not my gift, y'all. I'm not a great counselor, but I try to help people.
Yeah.
And there are so many people that I have counseled or have met with, and there are people who literally sabotage their own life.
Yeah.
And they don't understand why they keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's just like they rebuild something, and then they just tear it to pieces.
Yeah.
And then they have to rebuild, and then they tear it to pieces, and then they rebuild it and they tear it to pieces. They keep saying, I don't understand why this keeps happening to me. Why do I keep making these choices? Why do I keep doing this? It's because there is a sense of a stronghold that they have been struggling with and not knowing, not being self-aware enough and not doing the work enough to know that it could possibly be something that's been passed down to you. It could be something that started as a child, or something you picked up on that you just can't break free from. And the only way you break free from it is the power of the Holy Spirit that helps you break free from it. And sometimes that means you got to put the hard work in.
Yep.
God can instantaneously deliver you from a lot of those things. And I've seen it.
Yeah.
We all have seen it.
Right.
That when people give their life to Christ, it's just instant. It just immediately, it just stops.
Yeah.
But for many people, sometimes it's not instant, sometimes it's progressive.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's this struggle inside of your own heart with these strongholds that you've got to give over to God and do the work through counseling, and do the work through self-discovery, and do the work inside community, inside of a church or a body of believers.
Right.
As you walk with God, He uses others to reveal things to you about yourself that you've got to work on, that you've got to identify, that you've got to pray about. That's the work. And it's heavy work.
Yeah.
But we don't understand, when you do the heavy work, the load gets lighter.
Yeah.
But this is too heavy. I understand that. It is heavy.
Yeah.
But when you work through it,
Yep.
the load gets lighter.
Yeah.
And when the load gets lighter, what you pass down out of that is less than what you received.
Yeah.
Right.
And many people are just really going through. That's where a lot of people are right now,
Yeah.
and what they struggle with, you know.
Yep.
But they must understand, you know, what you received is not what you have to give.
That's right.
Yep.
You know, your best days are still to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can change the narrative.
Yeah.
Okay, you can. It doesn't have to always be like this.
Yeah.
That there is hope for people
Yeah.
moving forward in the future. Okay, I'm done with my rant.
Yeah.
It made me think about the weights and the running, and or when you did that illustration, it made me think of this fact. Right, weights are not bad. Not all the time.
Yep.
Weights are used for a different purpose.
Come on.
If you want to run, you don't run with weights.
Right.
Weights are used for a different season in a different location. Um, and they're used to build something,
Yep.
but they're not used for that environment and running.
Mm.
And so a lot of times in life, we go through a season or a storm or something that's happened to us, something that's been done to us, and we're saying, this is what I needed in that season. And we bring it into the next one. And we don't realize
That's
that,
good.
yes, God gave that to us in that season to help us through,
Mhm.
but we have to understand how to navigate through that, to sometimes let it go.
Yeah.
Because what has come with those weights has been things that we don't see.
Yep.
Like those weights have jagged edges, or they have things that slow us down.
Right.
And you're not called to get stronger now. You need to actually move quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to change up our workout equipment when we move from season to season.
Yeah.
That's
like
good.
like for people who have been in the church for a long time, like you were talking about, like the legacy that's passed down is that we want people to know Jesus. And like you said, the avenue that we get people to know Jesus now is different than it was even in 1995.
Yeah.
And things, we've had to let go of things, tradition, ideas, but it's allowed this church, this body, to still be able to reach the lost.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that that old thing was bad. That was just for a different season. And I'm not saying that everything that we hold on to is good,
Right.
but there can be a season for it,
Right.
you know? So
Can I also add to that, Jake? I want to take a little bit of avenue, but weights, and I thought you were going down this avenue at first, but when you have weights, something heavy, those things ultimately make you stronger.
yeah.
And when we move out of strongholds and we let them go, we also know that the things that you went through made you stronger
Yep.
for where you're going tomorrow.
Yep.
So although what was projected on you and passed down to you is something you got to let go of, it's still part of your story
Yep.
that made you stronger today.
Yep.
It's going to make you more free. You're stronger now,
Yeah.
And I think that's an avenue that many of us have to see. When you let that thing go, you realize, man, it made you have a sense of more perseverance.
Right.
It's made you stronger. It's
Right.
made you more adaptable. So sometimes it will help you moving forward in the future.
Yeah.
But when you ultimately let go of it, it will make you faster.
Right.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Do
That's
a
good.
run.
Well, and I think that's the goal too, is we have to let it go. A lot of times I think our mentality is, well, I'll just get better, or I'll just be different, or I'll just, rather than surrendering it. And the goal is we've got to throw it off. We've got to surrender it to the Lord so that he can do the work inside of us.
Right.
And,
Right.
a lot of times we're just trying to figure it out on our own strength, and we'll just keep keep carrying those weights because we can't do that in our own strength and in our own power.
Yeah.
So, well, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to. I just felt like I needed to tell somebody. Maybe you're watching today and you don't have many people in your life. When we start talking about legacy, you're like, I don't really have many people in my life that live the legacy of faith. Maybe you didn't come from a family like some of us did, where we had the examples of faith, and you're just new to this thing, and you're kind of like, man, I don't have that. And I know you want to pass it off differently to your kids, coworkers, the people in the church. You want to have something different to pass down to them, or to leave a legacy that looks different. But for you, maybe for you, maybe it's beginning to look at things a little different and look at people who live out a life of faith that are around you right now.
Yeah.
Get around them a little bit more,
Yeah.
and see how they act, and see how they conduct themselves, and see why they're different than everybody else, because that is the kind of legacy that you want to pick up from them,
That's good.
that you can live that and then pass that along to others.
Right.
You can learn from so many, and that's what I did from my father or Sister Bergeron or others that are gone. I know many of you have done the same thing. We're learning faith from them.
Yep.
We're seeing it in action.
Yep.
And then putting it into work in our life to pass it down to others.
Right.
So maybe you have to reevaluate your life and be able to say, okay, maybe I need to get in community in a small group, or maybe it's somebody in my small group, or maybe it's somebody that sits in the pew across from me, who I shake their hand every week and they're always got a smile on their face. Well, let's find out why they're always act a little bit different than everybody else. It's because they have that component of faith. They've got a story to tell. They've lived through some things. They've acted in faith. And it's going to maybe take for you to have just to step out of your comfort zone and find somebody like that. Invest yourself in them. That way you can learn from them and the legacy that they're going to leave behind that
Yeah.
can be passed to you and you can pass it on to
Pass it
others.
Yeah.
That's really good. All right. Well, our conversation has been fun today.
Yeah.
Will you close us in prayer?
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
God, thank you just so much for, God, just this word legacy. And I thank you just for the founders of our faith, God, the people who you, God, even just like handpicked and created. And thank you for the example that they set. And God, it was never just straightforward. It was always a hill and a valley and the mundane and just the normalities of life, the things that happen every day. But God, we're just asking you, just for anybody listening, even for us, God, that you would remind us that what we do matters, God. What we do impacts the kingdom of heaven, God, that it matters more than just us. It impacts more than just us. So, God, I'm asking if people are looking for somebody to glean legacy from, God, that you would provide that person for them, that you would drop a name in their head right now, God. And if there's somebody that needs to seek out someone that needs to know legacy, that needs to be passed down, maybe something different than what has come from their family, God, that you'd even burden our hearts to reach out to those people, God, because we never know. We never know how impactful legacy from you can be, God. Thank you for the faithfulness of this house, even just seeing a video from 30 years ago. God, thank you that you're so good and you're faithful. And God, you didn't have to provide the building and you didn't have to do anything like that, God. You sent us Jesus and that was enough, God, but you're faithful that you give us immeasurably more than we could ever ask, think, or imagine. So we thank you and we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.